By the end of today's video, you're gonna know exactly how to start feeling effortless power on your forehand. And we're gonna achieve that by not only breaking down how and what causes effortless power, but then give you 3 step-by-step drills that you can actually do while watching this video right now to start embedding the core biomechanical concepts of how to create effortless power into your unconscious muscle memory. So let's start off with first, how exactly do we create effortless power? How do we create where when we swing, we feel like very light, very powerful, very in control, and it's just this very pleasurable sensation with our forehand? It really just comes down and is simply explained just by 3 things. Number 1, the best players in the world use the bigger muscles of their body to generate power. Number 2, they use those muscles in a specific sequence. And then lastly, number 3 is they make contact in biomechanically leveraged positions. To explain and simplify all of this, I've created the Effortless Power Pyramid, where these are the 5 sources of power we want to use in the exact order that we want to use them. And as we use the power sources of this Effortless Power Pyramid, it then will connect to the optimal contact point. Because isn't it true that even if we used all the right muscles, we used our bigger muscles, but then we made contact in a bad position, or we, let's say, tightened up our wrist and really just like tensed up, it wouldn't matter. The 5 core sources of power that we want to use to really get that effortless sensation. Number 1 is we want to emphasize forward weight shift. By shifting our weight forward, it allows us to tap into every ounce of our body, every ounce of our weight to translate into racket head speed and into contact. What we'll find when the best players in the world just bomb their shots, it's usually they're setting up and they're able to effortlessly transfer and get their body weight going forward into the shot. The second source of power comes from the legs, where what we'll find is on the most effortless shots, the best players in the world are using a leg drive as they're executing their weight shift. The third effortless source of power comes from the rotation of the trunk. The fourth is then the arm performing this key anatomical motion of horizontal shoulder adduction. This is the arm traveling forward from the pec and the shoulder muscle. Really important here. The final power source is then the flexion of the shoulder. So when we combine all 5 of those power sources, right? We've got forward weight shift, we've got leg drive, we've got rotation, we've got adduction and shoulder flexion. That's how we're getting that effortless power. So how do we do that immediately? And what's the thing we should avoid? The number 1 thing that we want to avoid with our power generation is either flexion or tightness in the wrist, or flexion and tightness in the bicep and tricep muscle. From speaking with so many players, I kept hearing this phrase over and over again, and this might be you too. Does it ever feel like sometimes the harder that you try, the less power that you actually get? This is because you're just trying, you're swinging using the wrong muscle groups. Whereas what your experience should be like is, as you're accelerating, you actually want to focus on trying not to get power from the wrist, trying not to get power from the bicep, rather trying to get power from the bigger muscles of your body. So if I try in a way where I'm using the wrong muscles, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to be tightening up, I'm going to be trying harder, but my shots are going to feel worse. Versus if I disengage those little muscles of the wrist, the bicep, and the tricep, and I engage the bigger muscles, that's when I start feeling that amazing pop. And you probably even hear that shot too. Sounded very effortless. Let's now cover the 3 core aspects of how you should be making contact and what that contact should feel like in order to know that you're confidently executing and getting this effortless power sensation. The key contact point that we want to find is achieving 3 things. If we look at the best players in the world, when they make contact, number 1 is if we look from a side angle, you'll see that their arm is going to be in front of their chest, at least at about a 45-degree angle. So from a back angle, this looks like their arm being pointed towards the net post, just like that. The second checkpoint is then that their wrist is going to be in an extended position. From the side, you'll see that my racket isn't in front of my wrist and it's not behind my wrist, it's directly in line. The third and final checkpoint that really unlocks the highest levels of effortless power is related to the trunk. Specifically, if you make contact while leaning back, even if you get that good contact point, you won't have as much force and power versus if the chest is actually leaning forward. If you get your trunk to shift and lean forward at contact, it's gonna allow all of your weight to be translated into the ball, giving you that easy force going into the shot. What's a step-by-step drill that we can use immediately to start doing that? Here's a drill that I've been using with my students for getting the most results. Where number one, we're gonna focus on simply just prepping our racket with our racket behind our hand and our arm roughly in line with our belly button. Get into a neutral stance and just focus on achieving two key things. Number one, shifting your weight from your back leg to your front leg. And then number two, slightly adducting your arm forward to be in that perfect contact point that we just mentioned. From here, you can now just do a few fluid shadows, feeling yourself shifting your weight forward, feeling yourself making perfect contact. From there, you can do this at your house. When you're ready to step on the court, you can then grab balls, feed yourself, and just focus on hitting this checkpoint of the weight shifting forward and the arm going into contact. As we're executing this drill, we want to stay as relaxed as possible with the wrist. We want to be generating power from the forward weight shift and from the adduction and the flexion of the arm, just like that. So the arm is going forward, up, and we're shifting our weight forward. After you're starting to feel this effortless sensation, because we're using the bigger muscles of our body, we're now ready to take this to the next level. So in the next drill, what you're gonna focus on doing is now, rather than starting with your racket positioned in front of your body like this, we're now gonna start from our arm being positioned in the same checkpoint that the world's best players achieve on every single forehand with their backswing. Where you wanna get your right arm in line with your right hip, the racket tip away at a 45-degree angle, and the racket tip above the hand, created by the extension of the wrist. So all together, it's gonna look like this. You can validate this with visual feedback to just see if you're hitting these checkpoints. You can be doing this in real time as well. And what you're gonna focus on doing, getting into that neutral stance again, and now focus on do a fluid shadow where you shift your weight forward and you finish making your perfect contact point as we just covered. So you're gonna start from that checkpoint, shift your weight forward, and hit that perfect contact point just like that. Once you find yourself just able to do that very fluidly, your wrist is relaxed, you can then graduate to feeding yourself balls at about 10% speed, just very fluidly, emphasizing that new and improved contact point. The arm is in front, the wrist is extended, the trunk is leaning forward, and I'm successfully shifting my weight forward. Now, just by executing this fluidly, if we just increase the power using the same amount of correct muscles, boom, we're gonna start immediately feeling that effortless sensation. So do that, follow that progressive iterative process until you get all the way up to 100% speed. In the final drill, I would then just encourage you to be rallying with a friend and simply just focus on every single ball. You're getting to that backswing checkpoint. As you're rallying, you're very fluidly shifting your weight forward on every ball. You're finding that contact, your wrist is staying extended, and you're following through just like that. If you love this video and you also want to go more advanced, more deep, mastering every single phase of world-class forehand technique, I'd encourage you to click the link in the description. It's my blessing and honor to be your coach, and I'll see you in the next video. Let's go.